The idea is that there's a whole lot of structure or patterns or things like that that are in grain markets that we kind of recognize. I mean, you all know about harvest lows and and all of that kind of stuff. Like That's no news to anybody. But in terms of going back and looking at how those have panned out over the years, how consistently they happen, what's the magnitude of changes from here to here, and then is that something that you want to build into your marketing plan in terms of thinking about timing of sales and all of those kind of things, and I don't expect somebody to just like go whole hog and say, okay, I'm going to sell all of my wheat in May. But you may want to think about heavying up then, right? Or those types of things. Or and so we've got like tons of data that we've gone through, crunched, and all of that kind of stuff, and seeing how that would have performed if you had taken the extreme example. And then compare that to some other scenarios, looking at some new crop pricing. When are the better times and the worst times to do some new crop pricing? And again, based on how these patterns have worked over the years. So like in my mind, like, I don't want to just, look back, but there is something to those. They're based on real market behaviors. And so then you look at, okay, we've 25, 26, the year we're in, or looking ahead to 26, 27. Is there anything in there that's so different than the past bunch of years that would make markets behave completely differently?
Right.
And there are those kind of things, like when you look at, for example, for pulses, if you go back a whole bunch of years, and you look at price seasonality or things like that, there are exceptions. And one of them was in 2017, when all of a sudden in December, India put tariffs on peas and on lentils, and the markets just barfed. So that was an exception. But is this year, and you never know with any 100% certainty, but is this year that much different? And so I even started comparing price responses, like, from the harvest, when you normally have the harvest low, usually early September, and then our prices in the end of October, end of November, end of December, and so on. So how many years do prices rise from there, and what's the magnitude of that? And how many years out of the last 10, let's say, that prices have gone up from middle of September to end of October, end of November, end of December, and then later on as well too. But it's actually quite remarkable that even this year, for some crops, and not all of them by any means, this year is an exception for some crops. But for wheat, for canola, even for yellow peas, prices did rise from that September timeframe. It's not huge amounts, but I think it's enough to pay the carry, and more than pay the carry, and those kind of things. And I mean, there's other ways to lock in carry and those kind of things with some crops, but for cash traded crops, not really. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be working through, and then trying to take that back into a marketing plan. And I know you guys did a ton of that at your conference about building a marketing plan. So this is just another angle or a take on that, and how to incorporate some of that stuff. And so that's what we're doing. And so we have we're almost full in Saskatoon. I don't want it to get too big. I want it to be a nice group discussion-y kind of a size. We got more spots for Brandon still available, and still a couple left in Saskatoon. So they can go to our website, leftfieldcr.com, and then right on the homepage, there's more details about it.
And are you covering like some specialty crops in this as examples as well? Or are you just hitting the big ones? Or how are you?
Like it's all of the crops that we normally cover. So that includes and it's broken down by green lentils and red lentils. And so it's all of the crops. We use wheat as the main example, but there's reference guides that provide all of this information for all of the crops. So that'll be one of the takeaways from the session as well too. So that if you're looking at yellow mustard, when is a better time to forward price yellow mustard? Well, you can flip open to that section and you can look to see, so we certainly not time in one day to go through like 16 crops and a bunch of subtypes and all of that kind of stuff with each of these measures, but give them the tools that then they can take this and go, and then thing to plan out your sales when you want to make sales and things like that. So
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And so are you, is it just you up there, or do you have other people joining you?
I'm afraid
day,
so. Yeah.
You're the guy.
So the sessions run from 9 till 3:30, and that's probably about as long as somebody can stand listening to me. So that's, yeah.
I don't know, Chuck. I think last time I saw you speak, they wanted more. So yeah.
Yeah. Well,
good stuff. Stuff. All right. Well, that's awesome. That's a great way to kick off the year and get your farm's crop marketing plan dialed in here for 2026 and beyond. So good stuff. Look forward to talking to you after and seeing how all that went and your learnings from there as well. So good on you guys. All right. So this, I want to, set the table a little bit for 2026 here. How are you feeling, Chuck, when you look at the 16, 17, 20 different commodities that you're checking out here and researching? How are you feeling for this year? Do you feel that we're heading in a better direction than the last couple of years?
Well, the answer I'm going to give you is it depends by crop. But there are bright spots, like there really are. And some of the crops, when you look on paper, you look at the S&D for certain crops or things like that, they don't, there's a lot, we grew a huge crop this last year, but they're not looking extremely heavy. And I mean, spring wheat would be one of those, where we're exporting at a record pace again this year. Pulled up those numbers, which is better than last year, which was a record. So we're even recorder this year. And so, like crops like that, the ending stocks aren't going to be massive. But the hope is that in some cases, in some ways, the low prices are going to discourage acreage. This is one of those years where sometimes there's a lot of competition for acres. This year, it's some of these crops are trying to shed acres,
right.
And so it's kind of a very different way of thinking. Now, farmers will mostly stick to their rotations anyway, but there is that kind of a thing, and some crops desperately need fewer acres. Canary seed would be one of those. And so there are some crops where we're going to have just I was going to use a bad word, but we have a whole lot.
It's a family show, Chuck. It's a family show.
Yeah. Okay. But we have like ending stocks that are like almost 100%, or in some cases even over 100%. Green lentils would be one of those, where we really, really, really need to lose some acres so that the market can get back into balance. For something like canary seed, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years before we get back to any sense of tightness or whatever in that market.
Yeah.
So some cases, so some of those crops, some hope for, some of them, need a lot more patience, or just kind of a lot of people to just give up on it and, dump what they have, and I know they're not going to dump canary seed.
But they'll keep that one.
No.
Somewhere, somehow.
But lose acres and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the crops that I've been perennially negative toward has been mustard, and I'm actually getting friendly toward mustard now.
Okay.
And because of last year, we dropped acres, and we had a low quality crop.
Right.
So this year, one of the things that I'm noticing is that new crop bids, especially for special crops, there's almost nothing out there. It's crickets. And I know you sometimes wait for the crop production show.
Yep.
But we've had years where we've already had new crop P bids in October. Just the lack of any kind of bids is just telling me that there's no urgency, nobody trying to buy acres, and so on. Yeah.
I usually look at Agritrade in November as like the starting point on a few different bids. But one email I got yesterday from a broker was like, everyone's asking, we got nothing on much of anything right now. And it leaves a lot in flux. One other thing I'll add here as well, about acres for 2026. And I want to see your acreage guesses here or to have a conversation around that. But I talked to seed cleaners, a few of those guys, a few seed sellers, And I got a different answer from everybody on what was going on. And I'm like, perfect. That just means that there's no real scary one that everyone's sinking all their acres into. It's very, I got one was like, oh, I'm cleaning way more durum this year. One guy's like, I'm cleaning way more oats. One was way more spring wheat. I'm like, all right, like, there's nothing, I don't know. And then one guy was selling way more yellow pea seed than he expected. Like, anyways.
Well, and nobody wants to stick their neck out because, you got these possibilities that could turn into really huge shifts in the marketplace. You mentioned the word binary, right? So, like with respect to canola tariffs, Chinese canola tariffs, it's either here or it's here. There's no in between.
Yeah.
And so which is it going to be? At some point, China is going to drop those tariffs. But is it going to be this year? Is it going to be in 2020, the next year or whatever, however you want to measure it?
Or a version of it, drop it somewhere, maybe a new tariff somewhere else. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of possibilities and nobody wants to stick their neck out yet. And in some cases the new crop bids would be so bad, like they're just like a stink bid. And so nobody wants to have their name attached to that either.
I think I read somewhere there was like a $6 yellow pea bid for next year. I'm like, like, so
you have a number out there, but nobody's taking you up on it, right?
No, it's just the placeholder. Here's a number. Like, I don't know anyone that would look at that and be like, I gotta hitch my wagon to that one. That is the winner for me. So, anyways, so you talked a little bit about on and off switches. No real gray area for some of this stuff. Do you want to talk about India? Is there anything different out of India when it comes to our tariff situation? Is there anything different lately from China that you've seen? Like, this stuff's impossible to predict.
Especially China, because they're really not based on market signals at all or anything like that. So it's just either it could disappear in a hurry. There are rumors that Carney is going to head out to China in a few weeks, and is that going to be something? Who knows?
Got a vacation coming up. Yep.
Fingers crossed, and whatever. Maybe we'll have to start buying their EVs. I don't know, but anyway. But with respect to India, the one thing that I am watching that makes me nervous is that red lentil prices there are continuing to drop, and that's what triggered the yellow pea tariff. Was really low yellow pea prices. Seeing a similar thing happening in red lentils. Right now it's at 10% already. But are they gonna boost that? The one thing is that the 30% yellow pea tariff, I don't think has really stopped trade, and for the most part, it's just raised prices in India.
Oh, okay.
It's kept our prices flat, but they didn't collapse either.
Yeah.
So a 30% red lentil tariff, that might be manageable. Not great, but it would take out some of the upside, but it wouldn't stop trade entirely, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. And going over to Australia for a quick second, everything was kind of tickety-boo last time. Everything was fine. The big crop coming, maybe some quality concerns. I haven't paid attention lately. Is Australia, did that change, or did they just harvest a big crop and quality ended up being okay?
Yeah, it did. And, and especially with respect to lentils, but even the barley crop and, just about everything came off with, in big volumes, especially Western Australia. But no late season disasters or anything like that. In fact, the red lentil crop might be even a little bit bigger than what they were talking about before. So,
okay. All right. Okay. So your last report here, by the time this podcast goes out, you will have released another, your latest report. But the one I'm looking at was right before Christmas, and was your acreage guess. Some of your acreage guesses, your traditional one, because you do that earlier one as well now. But what stands out from an acreage perspective in that report? Like, is there anything you want to pull out of there that you think is the most noteworthy?
Well, I think one of the things that, over time, the more years that you do this, and it's been, probably about 15 years now for me that I've been doing these, is you realize that for the most part, aside from special crops and your major crops and things like that, there are the adjustments are relatively small. People stick to their rotations. There are people talking about, the decision between spring wheat and durum wheat in some parts of Saskatchewan, especially. Probably what we're seeing in general this year, some of the common themes, because these aren't just our guesses, like we're talking to people too, and so on. But we heard fairly consistently that acreage of pulses, especially peas, maybe to a lesser extent lentils, was going to drop, and I think that's justified. Same time, people talking about canola being higher, because it's still the one that pays the bills. That same old story, right? And so we kept hearing about that. Barley's probably a little more attractive choice,
a little friendlier. Yep.
And even spring wheat, it's people are always slagging spring wheat, but it's still, especially with the movement that we've had the last 2 years, it's again one of the ones that's paying the bills, just in terms of getting volumes out the door and so on. Not in terms of price, but just in terms of
not paying the full bill, but 80% of the bill. Yeah,
it's keeping you in craft dinner. How's that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So there's, although, sorry, I digress. We had our grandkids over the other day, so we had to buy them couldn't be craft dinner. It had to be Annie's.
Oh, yes.
It's $5 a box. Like it was, what?
Yep.
That used to be, you used to get like, I don't know how many for $1 when you bought craft dinner. I don't know. Anyway, I'm that old. Yeah. Anyway.
I think I saw craft dinner the other day for $1.50 a box. I think the original.
But we're not allowed to feed them craft dinner. It has to be Annie's.
Yeah. My kids won't eat pasta at all. So I don't know what we're going to do over here. Lots of fruits, which is a killer. So, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know how I got there, but yeah.
So, all right. So, looking at 2026, I think if I have to put my neck out there, and this is not a statement that puts my neck out there, but I just think that you're going to grow what you're good at. Like, I think at the end of the day, some crops will get a little less because price dictates that, but you're just going to stick with what you're comfortable with and what you think you can grow the most bushels of. In my crop rankings, wheat climbed compared to past years, which was a bit of a worry for me because it climbed in the rankings, but not because it was paying better, because everything else was paying worse.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So, so I think people are just going to spray the field and do the stuff they're really, really comfortable with, and not go and chase something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, just with respect to that, we do these gross margins, and they're very gross, and they're based on using standard methodology all through the years, and so on average, or typically, and I think we put this in the report, I'm not sure, but basically this gross margin for brown soil zone, dark brown, black soil zone, all of them dropped between $90 and $110 an acre this year.
Wow.
Like across all crops. Like, it's just, holy smokes. It's a lot tougher, and we don't have a government throwing $80 an acre at our oat production either.
No.
And I think that's a good thing. It's just counterproductive in the long run. Anyway, but I digress again.
Oh, Chuck, there we go.
See, I'm starting to do the really old politician, whether you like Biden or Trump, the really old politician thing, where you just start going off on tangents and
they got to bring it back in. All right, I see. So you have dark brown soil zone, black soil zone, brown soil zone. You got canola and flax, leading the pack. You got chickpeas leading in the.
I know. That one just baffles me. It's just, those prices are so terrible, but they're the best of a bad lot.
Yep.
Really.
Yeah. And then you've got some mustard in there, some barley as well in those rankings. But yeah, like you kind of look across here and, you're picking on malt barley here, which is okay. I think the malt side is, there's a lot of frustration out there right now. People are frustrated, and there's portions of Alberta where you can get more for your feed than you can for your malt, which isn't exciting.
Yeah, and in that case, like the model that we use, or the methodology that we use, uses lower nitrogen for malt barley, but also, quite a bit lower yields. And so that's why feed barley it's not just a strict price difference either.
Yeah. Yeah. Just looking at some of your changes here year over year. I won't go through all of them, obviously, but some of the ones that stand out is that higher, the higher barley acreage, which I can definitely agree with. Even from a forward contracting perspective, there's some barley prices out there that are not that scary for next fall. You got flax, canola up a little bit. Your oilseeds are all kind of up.
Oilseeds up, yeah.
Yep. Specialty crops down. Again, we grew a lot of
except
them,
for mustard.
Yeah, mustard's your biggest gain on here, up 30%. You got to make some T-shirts on that one.
I'm going next week in Saskatoon. I'm actually speaking to the mustard growers meeting. So this year I'll have some good news for them for a change.
There you go. Yeah. Oh man, something positive. As you look forward here for 2026, you talked about wheat, strength in wheat demand, but is there anything from like a price movement perspective that you'd look at as say that could be a bit more positive over the next 12 months than where we're at today?
I referred back to this whole thing about the tariffs and are they on or are they off? And that's the huge wild card. I mean, I think we could see a very much stronger stronger canola prices, considerable rise in canola prices if that were to take place. But what we also have in the canola market is all of this biofuel policy in the U.S. And that, they keep talking about it in announcements and it keeps getting kicked down the road and so on and so on. So if they finally, do something and say, yes, canola oil will qualify for, the same RINs or the same incentives as other oils. And it's not a given that Canadian or Mexican inputs are part of that. It's probable, but not, they can still change that on a dime. But like that could also be positive, not as positive because there's still limits in terms of how much crush you have in Canada or in the US of canola, capacity. So, but, that would certainly help that kind of a situation as well too. So I think there's on the canola side, if one or both of those things were to drop, yeah, absolutely, there's big upside there. I think wheat is, again, if you have people leaving a certain crop, and maybe even oats might be one of those. If you drop oat acres this year, then suddenly that gets a little bit tighter again. And so it's part of the regular dynamic in markets of low prices curing low prices. It's just a matter of how quickly that happens or the size of that cure if you do those kind of things. So there's a number of those where if you're a bit of a contrarian, then for sure you might see a bit of a response or a decent sized response. But it does take some guts to go against the flow that way, and guts and patience typically for those kind of situations.
For the farmers tuning in this week, do you have any like advice or a tip that you'd share for, to contribute to their crop marketing plan in a positive way? Is there something that you could add here as we wrap up our segment?
I would say be patient, look for opportunities. I mean, you talk about that all the time is, look for here's a special, here's an opportunity, to add to sales, pick up sales and things like that. But I think there's, when things are doomy and gloomy like they kind of are right now, you need patience and you don't want to get too caught up in that negative or whatever. I mean, we talking about the wheat market, we've been talking very negatively about the wheat market. But basis is not bad and movement has been absolutely amazing. Good. So that tells you there's real demand there. It's strong demand there. And Canadian wheat isn't cheap compared to other countries either. So we're selling lots of wheat at a premium relative to other wheat, but so that tells you that there's some real stuff going on there that we're not quite aware of. The other bit I would say is that I think China and their stockpiles of corn and wheat and aren't as big as we think, or they're poorer quality. I think that's going to factor in later in this year as well too, where they start to ramp up more purchases and so on. So again, I would say don't panic right now. Don't just give up, throw up your hands and say, I'm done for the year. I think there is room for a lot of crops, not all of them, but for a lot of crops to think in terms of, well, let's give this some time to work higher yet.
Yep.
Seasonally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great plug at the end there, Chuck, as well, folks. Again, a couple spaces left for Saskatoon for the workshop. A couple extra ones in Brandon available the week after. Please go check out Brandon and report back to me, because we do have a conference coming up there later this year.
Okay.
Let me know the hot spots in Brandon and in the businesses we need to partner with. But Chuck, thanks for joining me to kick off 2026 here. Appreciate your perspective. Keep up the good work, and have a great week in Saskatoon.
Likewise, we'll be in touch.